Ladies and gentlemen, there's a moment that comes to all of us, a moment that happens not in the noise of achievement, but in the silence of effort. It's that moment when no one's watching. No applause, no recognition, no deadline forcing your hand. Just you, and the choice to show up again and again and again. That's where consistency lives, not in the grand moments of triumph, not in the headlines or the victories or the breakthroughs. Consistency lives in the quiet. It hides in routine. It thrives in repetition, and most people never find it, because they spend their lives looking for motivation instead. Motivation is overrated. It's useful, yes, but it's fleeting. It's like sugar. It gives you a spike, but it can't sustain you. The most successful, most fulfilled, and most centered people I've studied, from elite athletes to trauma survivors to top-tier entrepreneurs, all have one thing in common. They've learned how to do the work even when they don't feel like it, especially when they don't feel like it, and that's where forcing yourself comes in. Now, when I say force, I don't mean brute willpower. I don't mean punishment or pushing yourself to the point of collapse. I mean a conscious, values-aligned decision to do what matters most regardless of how you feel in the moment. That's not about force against yourself. It's force for yourself. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I was working with a neurosurgery resident. Smart, disciplined, gifted. She had just finished a 72-hour stretch in the trauma unit and was visibly exhausted. I asked her how she managed to stay focused in such intensity. She said something I'll never forget. She said, "I don't wait to feel focused, I commit to being dependable." She wasn't depending on adrenaline or inspiration. She was anchored to identity, to integrity, and that's a far more stable foundation than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Identity, if built with intention, stays. Neuroscience has proven this. The basal ganglia, the part of the brain responsible for habit formation, doesn't respond to emotion. It responds to repetition. It doesn't care how inspired you are. It cares how often you repeat the same behavior. Repetition is how habits are born. Consistency is how they stick. So if you're trying to create real change, whether in your health, your relationships, your career, the question isn't how do I get motivated? The question is, how do I train myself to show up no matter what? That begins with defining what matters. Because if you don't know why you're doing something, it's very hard to keep doing it. That why becomes the anchor when everything else starts shaking. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Even when your why is clear, the day will come when you don't want to move. You don't want to write, you don't want to train, you don't want to forgive, you don't want to keep going. And that's the moment consistency is born. Not when things are easy, but when they aren't. That's the moment you build trust with yourself. That's the moment your identity shifts from someone who tries to someone who follows through. I worked with a man who survived stage 4 cancer. He told me the hardest part of the battle wasn't the treatment. It was the discipline to show up to life every day after the treatment ended. He said, "It's easy to fight when people are cheering. It's harder when the stadium empties and the lights go off. That's when the real work starts." Consistency is not a straight line. It's not about perfection, it's about rhythm. It's about returning to the center again and again, even when you fall. Especially when you fall. In fact, the people who succeed most are not the people who get it right the first time. They're the ones who get it wrong and then come back anyway. Resilience is not just about bouncing back from adversity. It's about bouncing back from yourself, from your own doubts, distractions, and days when you want to give up. Your brain is plastic. That means it's moldable. It means every choice you make wires you deeper into the person you are becoming. Every time you show up, you're not just doing a task. You're sculpting your character. You're reinforcing a path that makes future decisions easier. That's the compounding interest of consistency. Small efforts, repeated often, create seismic internal shifts. Let's talk biology for a moment. There's a powerful feedback loop between action and emotion. We often believe we need to feel like doing something before we do it. But research shows it works the other way around. Action creates emotion. Behavior creates belief. When you exercise, even when you don't feel like it, your body releases endorphins. When you get out of bed and write that email or show up to that meeting, your brain gets a hit of dopamine. Not from waiting, but from doing. Consistent behavior triggers neural pathways that say, "This is who I am." And once your brain believes that, it starts looking for evidence to support it. That's how identity is formed, but it starts with forcing the behavior first. Not in cruelty, but in commitment. I once coached a startup founder who had a habit of quitting things halfway through. He was brilliant ideas pouring out of him every week. But follow through, that was his weakness. He said, "I just lose interest after the excitement wears off." I told him that's exactly when the real you shows up. So we made a deal. Every day, no matter what, he had to spend 1 hour on the same project for 30 days straight. He resisted at first. He fidgeted, he procrastinated, but by week 3, something shifted. Not only did the project gain momentum, he gained belief in himself. Not because the work got easier, but because he realized he could trust himself to stay. And once you believe you can stay, you can build anything. Consistency is not about brute strength. It's about small steps, taken every single day in the same direction. It's about training your nervous system to feel safe in routine, to feel grounded in the familiar rhythm of effort, to find peace in the process, not just the result. I get it. We live in a world obsessed with speed. We want results now. We want the back in 6 weeks, the success in 6 months. But real growth, the kind that lasts, doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't rush. Trees don't sprint to grow. Mountains don't rise in a day, and neither does character. Consistency teaches you patience. It teaches you to find joy in the ordinary, to fall in love with the craft, not the claps. And I promise you, something magical happens when you choose to be consistent for no other reason than because it's who you are. When you don't need permission or applause or guarantees, just a quiet, stubborn resolve to keep going. That's the kind of power no one can take from you, because it doesn't depend on anything outside of you. It's built inside, it's built in the quiet, in the moments when no one knows what you're doing, when no spotlight is shining, and when there's no immediate reward waiting for you at the end of the task. That's where the real strength lies. You see, one of the greatest lies we've been told is that consistency is only for the disciplined, or the talented, or the lucky. But that's not true. Consistency is not a personality trait. It's a choice, a difficult one, an inconvenient one. But a choice nonetheless. And anyone, regardless of background, resources, or circumstance, can make it. I want to share a story with you about a man named Eli. Eli was a janitor at a public school in the Midwest. Every day for 28 years, he showed up before dawn and left after the sun had set. He knew every crack in the floor, every child's name, and exactly how much soap to put in every dispenser. One day, during a snowstorm, when the roads were nearly shut down and most of the staff didn't show up, Eli was there. Shoveling the sidewalks, making sure the building was warm, clearing paths for the buses that would never arrive. When asked why he bothered coming in, he simply said, "Because it's what I do." Now, you might hear that and think it's small. But let me tell you something, Eli's consistency was not small. It was seismic. He didn't just show up to a job. He created reliability in a place that desperately needed it. And every kid who passed through that school carried a little bit of Eli's spirit with him. That's what consistency does. It echoes. We underestimate the value of showing up. We glamorize transformation, but ignore the tiny decisions that get us there. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't brush your teeth once and expect lifelong dental health. You do it every day. Twice if you're serious. You don't celebrate it, but you do it because it's who you are. That's the level of integration I'm talking about. When your commitments become part of your identity, you don't argue with them. You just live them. That's the neurological key, by the way. Identity-based habits When we say, I'm trying to write, or I want to get in shape, the brain hears effort. But when you say, I'm a writer, or I'm an athlete, the brain looks for behavior to support that identity. This is the power of consistency. It not only changes your results, it changes who you believe you are. But that process isn't linear. Some days will feel like breakthroughs. Others will feel like you're moving through quicksand. You'll want to quit. You'll rationalize taking a break. You'll tell yourself, what's the point? And that's when it matters most. Let me be clear. Forcing yourself to be consistent doesn't mean ignoring your humanity. It means honoring it. It means recognizing that fatigue is not failure. It means allowing space for rest, but not for regression. It means giving yourself grace without letting yourself off the hook. There is no destination without the discipline of the road, and the road most days will look unremarkable. The same routine, the same practice, the same showing up. But inside that sameness is a kind of silent excellence, a momentum that builds not in explosions, but in layers. And those layers matter. I once sat with a retired Olympian who told me the secret to his gold medal. He said, everyone saw the final 40 seconds of my race. No one saw the 17 years of 4:30 a.m. practices, 17 years. Every morning, in the cold, in the rain, in silence, and he wasn't driven by glory. He was driven by a promise he made to himself, to keep showing up no matter what. That's what I want to invite you into, not a moment of inspiration, but a lifestyle of intention. Consistency, when chosen with purpose, is one of the most loving things you can give yourself. It says, I matter enough to follow through. It says, my future is worth protecting. It says, I refuse to be a slave to my moods. That kind of self-respect is rare. But it's contagious. When you live with consistency, you inspire it in others. Your kids see it, your friends feel it. Your team rises to meet it, because people don't trust charisma. They trust consistency. That's how leaders are made. Not by being loud, but by being reliable. In my work with organizational behavior, I've seen companies spend millions trying to fix culture problems. They run workshops, hire consultants, change branding. But do you know what really changes a culture? When one person decides to live with integrity every single day. When one person becomes the constant in a sea of chaos. That's who you can be. You don't have to fix the world. Just show up to your own life, fully, honestly, consistently. The truth is, the world doesn't need more intensity. It needs more endurance. And that endurance is born from the willingness to keep showing up long after the novelty fades. You want a better life, a better career, a better relationship. Show up again and again and again. When it's easy, when it's not, when you feel like it, when you don't. Because every time you show up, you place one more brick in the foundation of a life built on self-respect, not self-doubt. On discipline, not dependence. On truth, not trends. And that life, while it may not always be flashy, will be deeply, quietly, profoundly fulfilling. So when tomorrow comes and the alarm rings, and you feel the weight of choice pressing against your chest, remember this: you don't need motivation. You need movement. You don't need hype. You need habit. You don't need the perfect plan. You just need to begin. Again, because showing up isn't something you do once. It's something you choose daily with courage, with love, with resolve, and that choice, that's where your power lives. Thank you.